Thanks for joining today, Gemma. How are you?
No, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to get chatting and see where we go with it.
Good. Okay, so let's start with little Gemma. Okay, so growing up in Leeds, a Liverpool supporter, how was that?
It was fun. No, I mean, I would always have my Liverpool kit on. I think looking back at pictures now, I would always have like big football parties and everyone would kind of come dressed and I'd be there just proud as anything in my Liverpool kit. I didn't care, and I always remember the games I used to go to watch at Ellen Road. It was always Leeds and Liverpool. So I was quite lucky. My sister actually used to take me because she knew obviously how much I love Liverpool. So I didn't get too much grief at the time. I think obviously with Leeds being in the Prem and in the Champions League and competing at the top at that time, and Liverpool probably weren't as dominant as they are now. So yeah, it was always in me from a young age, and it's something that's obviously stuck by me.
So you played for top sides over your career, but obviously Leeds to begin with, and then the move to Liverpool came about. How was it when you first heard about that, being let's say a boyhood or girlhood Liverpool fan?
Yeah, I mean, obviously playing for Leeds, it was all I ever knew growing up. Since I was young, I think I was at the Centre of Excellence since I was 9. So I'd never really known anything else. And obviously being a young girl at that time, there wasn't many other young girls that played. So I was grateful to be in an environment from such a young age around other females and around other young girls that were like me, because if I wasn't in that, then I didn't really know that it was the norm. I think especially at school and growing through, especially into high school, I was still the only girl that played.
Wow.
So I was very, very grateful that I had that kind of outside of school, because I think growing up, obviously school dictates a lot of social and how people, go through life in terms of what your friends do. So I had the opportunities through there, and then I think at 16 I come to the first team at Leeds, which is obviously quite young looking back on it. So I've been in the first team environment since 16, and that was, again, Leeds. As much as I was a Liverpool fan, Leeds was who I played for, and it meant a lot for me coming through and playing for my hometown. And then obviously the talk of the Super League coming in, and I think, I mean, even now in the women's game, you don't believe it until it happens almost. And there'd been a lot of talk in progressing the league to become more professional, and for them to start the Super League in 2012, that was going to be a big, the plans are to become semi-professional and aim to become professional. Well, you'd kind of heard it so many times before. You'd seen it in America where it goes and then it goes bust. So for it to actually happen, and at the time, like I say, I was in the first team at Leeds, and I was also preparing to go into university. And so everything was kind of perfect playing for Leeds, and I was going to study at Leeds as well. And then we just got a call just before Christmas to say that the funding to enter Leeds into the Super League had been withdrawn, and it was after the deadline for the application, so we couldn't find alternative funding to fund the team. And the team we had was extremely exciting, a lot of potential, and very young. And that for me was a big kind of shock, because like I say, Leeds was all I ever knew. It was perfect being at home, studying, doing it alongside. And but if I wanted to play in the top league, I would have to move. So that was when I actually could have had the opportunity to go to Liverpool at that point. But at the time, for me, I thought my best option was the option which was the furthest away, which was Chelsea. So yeah, I used to travel. My dad would, God bless him, he would pick me up from university in Leeds, because I'd already agreed to go there. And we would travel to Chelsea 2 or 3 times a week, train, and then obviously play at the weekend. And I did that for 2 years. And obviously in that time period, the league was starting to grow. I think the first 2 years of the Super League, Liverpool finished bottom, and then they decided to kind of revamp and the year I signed was when obviously 13 other players signed at the same time. So it was an exciting project for me at the time, and it coincided also with my final year at university, the game growing, and I was so excited by the plans at Liverpool, because being a Liverpool fan, I was like, this is where I want to be. And it meant so much for me to come in. And yeah, obviously we hit the ground running.
Well, I was going to say that. So Gemma Bonner, captain of a back-to-back WSL side. Could you believe that was happening?
No, honestly, and I still think it's probably taken me, I mean, it's been 10 years since we won the first title, and it's still kind of looking back now, I'm like, wow, like I actually did back-to-back titles, and it was probably something that I would not be reluctant to say about before, but obviously you're still playing, you're still in the moment, and I'm still playing now, but I also realised the more experience I've got in the game, the harder it is, what you've achieved. So yeah, for me, it's definitely for sure something that I'm extremely proud of, and especially that team we had in the first 2 years. I mean, I'm still in contact with a lot of the players, which shows how special the group was. So yeah, it's something I'm extremely proud of, but also being back here, it wants to, I care so much about the club that I want to keep pushing it and driving it back to where we were.
Great answer, because we all do as well. So what's the difference with the standard of the WSL now compared to when it first broke out in 2012? Because obviously a lot of things have changed since then.
Yeah, I think obviously at the time, not all the teams were fully professional as such. So a lot of players were still working on the side and training in the evenings, and I think for the first year in 2013, there was some players still working through the day, and we would always train in the evening. So it wasn't until, we gradually did it, and then other teams followed suit. So I think naturally, in terms of the physical side, and even the technical side, being on the ball every single day and it becoming your job, and that's your sole focus, you have a responsibility that comes first. And I think the development over the time, a lot more players are now coming through, younger players are coming through, the standards getting higher, which is naturally increasing the competitiveness. And I think you look at the amount of teams in the league now, the support that you're getting, and there's a lot more competitive games between the teams. So I think, but then, you still have to be realistic, and look what's just happened to Reading. They've dropped out the league and they've gone part-time. So I think it's very easy to get carried away with how much the women's game is progressing and how the top are doing unbelievable. And we've got the transfer fees coming in, but I think it still shows we've got such a long way to go.
Sorry for butting in, but is that a scary proposition to think that if the club were to go down, obviously that's not the ambition, and hopefully that doesn't happen anytime soon. Is that a scary proposition for players like yourself?
I think it's been a women's, like being in sport in general, not necessarily in football, but I think it's the nature of being a female in sport that you don't necessarily have something that consistently you can rely on. I think, I've seen the amount of players in the league below that don't know if they have a contract for the next year, or they don't know where they're going to be. I think it still shows, like, yes, like I say, the money's coming in for the top league and the top players and the top teams, but is the gap between the top and the bottom becoming even bigger? Which I hope it doesn't, but I think we've still got a responsibility as players and in the women's game to make sure that we kind of keep that unity within the whole game. And we make sure that it doesn't become the top four, a big gap between the top and the bottom, because I think then we will lose the competitiveness within the game, which I think is growing so much. So I think it's obviously a fine balance, but I would say definitely being a female in sport, for me, I've always been used to that battle, because I was always told football was never going to be a career. So you're almost used to proving people wrong and trying to fight down the barriers every single day. And I think obviously evidence of Reading going part-time is still evident that it's still live and it's still here as much as the game is growing.
Yeah. So you moved stateside after, let's say, 10, 11 years spell in English football. What's the difference with the States compared to the English game? Because I've always been quite nervous about the proposition of America because I feel like they've got so much to give. The facilities are unbelievable, but their sole focus isn't actually on, let's say, soccer, their side. And when it does become their main focus, they're a scary proposition, aren't they?
Yeah, I think obviously the nature, I think, of the lifestyles, I think naturally I noticed over there that every single kid, female or boy or girl, is outside and they're playing sport from such a young age. Obviously, naturally, the weather helps, but I think you can see how athletically they're so much more developed, and it's in their nature that from a kid they're outside and they're just playing sport. No matter what it is, they're all good at sport. And I think, you mentioned the technical, tactical side. What they almost lack in that, they have the competitiveness, the mentality to match it and compete. So for me, it was a different challenge. I think I'd been in the league for 15 years, playing against the same players almost throughout and growing up with the same players. And I never was looking for it. It was a complete out of the blue. And it was probably one of them that it was an opportunity that came to me, and I'd considered playing abroad before, but it didn't quite feel right. And at the time I was like, you know what, if I don't do it now, I might never do it. And I found myself looking back quite comfortable playing the league because I knew what the players were going to do, and I needed something fresh. I needed a challenge. So I threw myself in. I didn't really know anyone out there, didn't know anything. It was a new expansion team. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go, challenge myself. And it's something for me that I've never really been the best physical player in terms of athleticism. And I wanted to challenge myself in that way, play against different styles, different kind of players, and hopefully kind of contribute both together. So it took me a while to adjust. The nature of the games is just, it's so end to end, like I'd gone from being at Man City where you control the ball, like 80% of the time you're in possession, to basically there's no, I wouldn't say hardly controlled possession. It's just, let's just go all out, compete. And for me, it was exciting because you couldn't go into a game knowing how the game was going to go. No teams really set off. I think over here you can genuinely predict the flow of the game. Yeah. In terms of who's going to sit in a block, or they're going to counter attack, or you've got one player that if you kind of nullify them, you're doing a good job. In America, it was, you have to be ready for every game. It's not an easy game, and the top can beat the bottom at any point. So that for me was, it really kind of, I enjoyed that side of it, the competitiveness, something different. And I definitely feel like I learned so much, and I hopefully grew as a person going into a different culture, moving away from home, but also on the football side, so that now when I've come back, I've obviously seen the leagues keep progressing, so that now when I come back, I'm hoping now next year with a proper pre-season behind me, I can kind of start and build on from there.
So how did you come about coming back to Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean, I probably decided maybe halfway through last year, I kind of knew that I wanted to go back and kind of put the two games together in terms of athleticism, what I've learned. Obviously the girls won the Euros, the league was progressing, and I did miss the football side, the technical, tactical, because that's kind of me, and I love being on the ball and in possession. And so I was kind of craving that technical and the knowledge, and just playing with the ball probably a little bit more than you have, especially in America, being a defender, because there's a lot of spacing behind. And so I don't regret going one bit. I loved every minute. I felt challenged, but I did want to obviously come back, and it was obviously tied in with Liverpool getting promoted. I had a few conversations. I mean, I could have gone to other clubs, but I think my love for Liverpool was always, I think I took my time in the decision, because I didn't want to just be like, yeah, I want to come back to Liverpool. I think when I left, I knew I wanted to come back, but I didn't know when or if I would. So I was always very aware of, I needed to make sure I watched and see if I could see myself playing in the team again, and building something. And I didn't want to come back if I didn't see the team growing, and having an ambition, like I say, to get back and competing at the top of the league. So for me, I felt like I could contribute in terms of bringing my experience back in, being at the club before, and hopefully on the pitch contributing to building as well. So yeah, I took my time because I didn't want to make an emotional decision, as much as the pull is always there, and I was always their biggest supporter from afar. But I think the girls, they started the season very well, and I think finishing where we did in the table, it's a very respectable finish in terms of the first season back in the top league. But now next year, I want to go again and keep pushing.
Well, I know you probably can't answer this as much as we'd like you to, and I won't push you any buttons, but it's safe to say we haven't had the training facilities that we've deserved as a club over the years, and you'll know that yourself, training day in, day out. How did you react when you got told about Melwood?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been so much spoken about in terms of the women's facilities, what we've had. And I think I did know from conversations, obviously coming back, that it has been obviously an aim for the club to improve the training facilities. And obviously there was the big kind of decision in the first place why we weren't there. But I think the investment that the club have put in now in terms of housing us at Melwood, having our own training facility, I think that's a huge statement in itself in terms of having our own space. So that for me obviously was kind of a big, it was a kind of switch in the ambition, in terms of we'll give you the training facility, we'll help you. And I think naturally a club like Liverpool, it's got so many worldwide fans, and it will attract naturally so many players. And for us, hopefully having a home of Melwood now, making it our own, and I hope that we can push on even more physically, because we'll have our own environment. We'll be able to build the Liverpool culture as such, in terms of our own home. I'm hoping that will again take us to the next level. But I think it was definitely needed in terms of the way that the women's game's growing. But as everything in the women's game, it's time. So I'm just obviously I'm buzzing that we're going to be back at Melwood, because it's been, I think when I left, the men were still there. So I've been there a lot when it was the men's that were training there. So it means so much to the club, and hopefully we can, carry on all those memories that we made there, and keep making it a driving force for us to keep improving.
Would you say you feel more valued as a footballer now then? Because, I'm not saying you weren't anyway, but that does show the ambition for the club, doesn't it? It shows that we want to take the women's game and the women's club to a better place, because we both know that the AXA, I live a road or two away from the AXA, that would have been the dream. But would you say it's better late than never that you've got the Melwood move?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can always look back and be like, what if, or we should have. But I think the reality is we weren't. But now, moving forward, they've put this in place. They're investing the money. They're going to build the training facility that we actually can go in and make the most of it. And for me, I've always been a firm believer in, whether this is because of how I've been brought up and how I've gone through my career, and that you can have all the facilities in the world, but if you don't have the right things in place, then, we won 2 titles playing at Widnes. So we had such a good team, and you can have all the facilities in the world, but if you don't have the right infrastructure and coaches and teammates, then the kind of things don't really mean anything. But obviously they have a huge, help us alongside to increasing the quality of training. But I do think you have to have both the mentality, and obviously the facilities will aid training on the pitches. I think that was probably a big one for us as players, because that's where we are. We want to be on the best grass pitches, which I can't say we've necessarily had previously. As much as the club supported us, naturally you're not going to get the best unless you're at the best facilities. So for me, having a football pitch that we can train on, we're not having to change surfaces between 3G and back to grass. As a player, that's obviously makes a huge difference. So yeah, I think we're all super excited. I think it's been probably a long time coming for everyone, not just the players. I think everyone at the club. And having such a historic place like Melwood, it's exciting.
Yeah, it stinks of history, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about the work you do for the MND Association. So I know you're a massive advocate in helping raising not only awareness but funds for such a heartbreaking disease, let's say. How did you get involved with this to begin with?
So I've obviously got a few kind of close connections. Obviously, when I was at Man City, Stephen Darby got diagnosed, Steph's husband, and we were actually travelling on a away trip in Champions League at the time when Steph got the call, and then I'd never heard of it, never had a clue. I didn't really know what it was, and I think it spent that time period trying to learn a little bit more and understand about it. And I was completely kind of taken aback and shocked, and how devastating it is that no one really knew about it from the people that I spoke to. And then not too long after that, obviously Rob Burrow got diagnosed, and for me, Rob's been, ever since I was 7 or 8 in school, he was always someone that would come in alongside Kev Sinfield, and they would present, it would be the Sporting Awards, and they were always visible for me from such a young age. And I was a huge rugby fan, so I would go to the games, and I would always kind of be the little fan at the front trying to get the signatures after games, and I'll always be grateful for how they interacted with me from such a young age. And they would remember me from school at games and be like, oh, how's your football going? And just those tiny little interactions kind of stuck with me and how they were as professional players. And I think I grew to have so much respect for them and know how they were as people, not just professionals. And I think that obviously continued and all the way through until Rob's diagnosis, which was, it was devastating how quick his health declined. And just after he'd got diagnosed, he did a charity evening, and they asked me to go along and be a part of the evening. And that for me was a big kind of, wow, like it meant so much to me that I could not give back, but I think how valued they are to me and how I feel like I've been able to look up to them and have that inspiration and respect, and how I've tried to model my career on almost in terms of how I am. I'll forever be grateful for how they are with me. So anything I could do to kind of give back or help and support. So I think as well as having the personal connection, I also had the other kind of connection on the professional side. So that was my first involvement in terms of getting involved. And from the first moment, I wanted to raise awareness and help in any way you can, just I think like anyone would. So yeah, and then obviously Kev started doing the crazy challenges. The first one being through lockdown, because obviously COVID hit just after. So I was trying to keep in touch with it. Obviously in the meantime, I'd just moved to America, so I was always trying to keep an eye on it and keep an eye on how Rob was doing. And then I came back, and for me, because the season was different over there, we had the winter off. That was my off season. And obviously Kev did his challenges November time, both years. So he asked if I'd like to join and be a part of the run. So I said, of course, I'd love to. Like, I'd be more than privileged and honoured to join you. So yeah, it was just, honestly, it was unbelievable just joining in especially the first one when he did the 7 marathons in 7 days. And then
Ridiculous.
he did that on his own. And then he did the 101 mile. So I joined him at Nottingham. I ended up running over a marathon the first time with him, which I didn't realise. But for me, it shows, like, once you're in that team and you're doing it for Rob, the amount of support was incredible. I think just going along the route, the amount of people that came out, and that was probably the biggest thing for me, that, there's so many people now, everyone knows about it, everyone's talking about it. The amount of funds that are being raised, it's hopefully going to help so many people. And at least the biggest thing is give them some hope that we will find a cure. So for us, we're very lucky and privileged to do what we do, but you know, it's something like that. It's devastating and it can change someone's lives, but also their family and friends too. And yeah, I mean, what Kev's done is unbelievable. And for him to do the Ultra 7, honestly, I don't know how he does it, but what I can say is when you're in that team of people and you know it's so strong and you find a way. I honestly didn't think I'd not run for, I think it was 6 weeks before I ran from York to Bradford with him. And I was thinking, I've never run this far, but I did it and I felt great afterwards. A little bit tired, but you find a way, because naturally you realise that, you know, unfortunately the people that are diagnosed that are finding a way and they're showing so much fight that you're doing as much as you can to, you know, if it's an extra pound that gets donated, it could eventually, all those pounds add up and hopefully give us a cure one day, which is what we're looking for.
Definitely. I've had a personal experience with this, which is why I was so adamant that I wanted you to come on. So my uncle passed away, I think it's 15 years ago this year with MND, after battling for 3.5 years. And, you know, I've lost people to so many different, let's say, different diseases or different things have happened, but that was, I'd say that's up there with the most heartbreaking or the most heartbroken I've ever been, because you're getting to see someone deteriorate in front of your eyes. And it's just, it's indescribable, let's say.
It is, and I think it's so hard.
Still brings me like, yeah, it still gives me like that horrible feeling in my stomach and my throat when I think or talk about it. But it's so important that people know about this disease and, you know, raise more awareness, raise more funds to try and actually find a cure for this, because, like I said, it's heartbreaking. And what Kev has done, and obviously everybody else who's been part of this process, let's say, it's heroic for me, because I didn't have the chance to do something like this. I was still 16, 17. Yeah. So I just look to you, and it's, honest to God, it's inspirational. So I just want to take my hat off to you.
Oh no, I think honestly, when we did the 101 challenge, we would stop at, I think we did 7K every hour, but we would stop and there would always be someone that rang the bell for us to start, and they'd either been diagnosed with it or was a relative or had someone. And I think being in that community, once you're in it, it's so, honestly, it's so heartwarming how everyone comes together. And I think it's very unique and special in terms of you already have a connection with them. You've never met them before, you've never spoke to them before, but immediately you have like a connection with them. And that for me is something that I hold, and I'll always try and do what I can and where I can. So yeah, I mean, you might have seen I'm doing the charity auction at the moment. It's kind of, so when Kev did his film premiere, when you went in, you actually got a raffle ticket to win his signed shirts. And, you know, my ticket got pulled out. I'm like, oh no.
Tell you what.
Yeah, so I spoke to a few people and I was like, you know what, let's just do an auction for it. So I thought of obviously doing a £7 donation in terms of Rob's shirt number means so much to, you know, the iconic number 7. And, you know, for a £7 donation to have one of Kev's signed shirts, for me, I'd be doing it. But for me, it was just another way to kind of give back, and hopefully someone can appreciate it. And like I said before, any little fund is obviously going to affect so many people. And hopefully, like I say, the aim is to find a cure, because it's such a devastating illness.
Yeah, where can people find the link? Is it still live now?
Yeah, it's still live until I think it's the 13th of July. So there's another couple of weeks, so I can send you the link, but it'll be on my social media pages across Twitter, Instagram, and honestly, any £7 donation will just enter you in the draw. And yeah, I'd be so grateful for any donations, as would the whole MND community as well.
I think what you'll find is whoever wins it will probably do the same and just keep trying and trying. I think that would be a nice aim, wouldn't it?
Honestly, it would. I mean, like I say, the aim is the awareness, the funds. And I think once you'll know yourself to see someone go through it. And I think Rob will probably, he says he's very lucky because he has the support around him, and he does it for the reason that he's trying to help the other people that don't necessarily have the funds, that can, provide them with the wheelchair, to provide them with the computer, that they can still communicate with people. And I think that's what a lot of people maybe don't realise, that if you don't have the funds, then life's even harder, not just for the individual, but the family can't communicate. They can't, everything's so much harder. They can't change the home to, facilitate the needs. So for me, as much as we're raising the awareness, the funds will enable families to hopefully live life to the best that they can, with the troubles that they're having.
That's brilliant, that, Gemma. Keep it going. I'd like to finish with just a couple of questions, if that's okay. So, let's say you finish mid-table, which is, a really good, what you'd probably say minimum you'd want from staying up, and your first season back in the WSL. But what's the ambition going into the new season?
Yeah, I think we had to be realistic this year in terms of coming into the league. The priority was to stay in the league with how competitive it's been. If you ask me, I'm super competitive. I want to win every single game. I'm wanting to at least finish the same and higher again. I think, we spoke a lot in the women's game about the top four, and the gap getting bigger, but I think outside of the top four, it's extremely competitive. And I think there's games, we dropped points to Leicester twice, which we were extremely disappointed with. But there was also games where, we've held on and we've got the win. So I think in games we've shown how good we can be, but it's getting that to that level on a consistent basis. And I think hopefully we can improve the squad in terms of the signings, add the competitiveness, get some more experience of playing in the WSL, because I don't think you can underestimate having the experience within the league. So for me, I want to be winning every game, but at the same time realistic that outside the top four, everyone else is competitive. And I think, it showed even to the last game of the season, the relegation, it was so close. So the game, the league's getting so competitive that I want to finish as high as possible. That's all I can say. Just keep on building, keep on winning. I think we started to build some momentum, especially in the last few games of the season. But like I say, it's getting that on a consistent basis. And I have to say, the fans have been incredible since coming back. For me, they've always been there since day one. And even since moving away to different clubs, I've always felt the love. But I think coming back and having the fans back, it's been incredible.
Yeah, because obviously you've seen since coming back as well, the numbers are starting to increase on the games, especially at Prenton Park. So you must feel proud to see that.
Oh, honestly, it's unbelievable. And I think, having the supporters travel on the away bus, that for me, it almost makes it feel like a home game, because our fans are that good. And as a player going out onto the pitch, we've had some tough moments, don't get me wrong. But they'll always stick by us no matter what. And I think it's very unique in terms of our fan base and how much they support the group, home and away, how much they travel. And I think without them, they're a huge part of the women's game in terms of how much they support us as players, as people. But they show their support and they sing loud and proud every single game. So for me, I'm so grateful to be back and playing in front of them, and hopefully we can give them some more things to cheer about this year.
Definitely. Okay, so just a bit of fun, this one. Willie Isa scoring the winning try in the Super League Grand Final, or Gemma Bonner scoring a last-minute winner to win the WSL?
Oh, me all day long. He doesn't really score tries. No, I'm taking that one. I want to win again, Liverpool.
Okay, and England's chances in the Women's World Cup?
Honestly, I think so good. The squad they've got, I know there's been a lot of talk about injuries, but I still think attacking wise, they have so many players that can change a game and create those moments which you need in such big tournaments, because whether it's set pieces or a moment of brilliance 1v1, that's the difference in games. And for me, I think England have got such a good squad that, if it's not really working, they've got players that can change the game, play a different style. So yeah, I'm hoping they go all the way. It will be difficult. There's obviously a lot of quality of players, but there's also a lot of big players that are not there, which I think England have still got the strength and depth in their squad and the quality of the players to have the potential to do something extremely special.
Okay, and what message have you got for any young girl who's, let's say embarrassed about wanting to play football with the boys, let's say, because, you know, it's not a big thing in schools for girls to play football, and there needs to be more of it. My daughter's 2, and I'm sure she'll be kicking a ball around because of her brother, and for me, she's got no choice. But what message do you have for any young girl who wants to play football?
I mean, for me, I was always told girls don't play football. And I was told you can never have a career, you're not going to do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And for me, I played it because I just loved the game, and that was stronger than anything else. I got so much enjoyment out of it. And I enjoyed proving people wrong. And, you know, still to this day, like I said before, we're still breaking down the barriers. But for me, there's so much more fun and enjoyable moments in the game. You get to meet so many other people across the world, and I think the emotions positively far outweigh any kind of negativity that you get. And I would just say for any young girl, you can be whoever you want to be. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Whether you're a boy or girl, you can do it if you want to put your mind to it. Go out and don't let anyone stop you, because you've seen how far the women's game has come now. And hopefully there's a lot more female role models which show that. But yeah, definitely don't be bullied out of it by saying that you're not good enough to play or you can't play, because, you know, I think we've shown on the world stage that girls can definitely play football.
Well said. Well said. Okay, let's call it a pod there, Gem. I appreciate your time today, and obviously...
No, thanks so much for changing and getting me on. And I'm glad I just kind of... I know it took a while to kind of get to this point, but because I got a message from my agent to be like, oh, I know you tried to contact Andy, so I texted him. I was like, I'll sort it out, don't worry.
Well, good luck with pre-season. I know that's...
No, thank you.
That's a tough time, let's say. And good luck for the season. And I'll be at Printon Park with Oliver, my little boy.
Oh, you have to let me know.
So,
yeah,
no, I'll drop you a message.
Okay. If I send you the link over for the auction, will you put that out for me as well, please?
Yeah.
I'll
start doing that from now.
Yeah, that would be great, please. I think I'm only £500 in. But just there's a few weeks left, so if you've got anyone that can share it as well.
Of course, yeah.
That's what I want to get on it. It'd be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Let's smash this season and try and get a good cup run as well.
Please, that's one thing we've never done at Liverpool is the cups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I'll leave it there. Good luck.
Thanks so much, Tom. Enjoy tonight. Hopefully you don't get too late.
See you later.
See you.